If you're looking for value, like actual undervalued assets,
This car
might be your play. But if you're looking for appreciation momentum, the data says look elsewhere right now. I went into the data for Mecum Kissimmee 2026 expecting a snowstorm, a cooling market, maybe even a crash. Instead, I found a forest fire. But here's the crazy part. The fire is burning in two completely opposite directions. On one side, we have a 1971 Hemi selling for $3.3 million. On the other side, entire segments of the collector car market, cars that you and I grew up with in the 80s and 90s, have basically vanished from the traditional auction block. Whether you're 35, 45, or 55, pay attention, because what I found in this data deep dive is going to change how you think about investing in classic or collector cars. The market isn't dying, it's mutating. So grab a beverage, settle in, and let's get nerdy, because the data doesn't lie. Welcome to more Auction Secrets Revealed. I'm Rudy Samsel, the co-founder of Guys with Rides, the trusted dealer-free resource for everyday enthusiasts like you and me. Before launching Guys with Rides, I spent years as a big data analyst in the pharmaceutical industry. So I'm able to apply those same rigorous techniques to automotive trends. My analysis of the several hundred original and highly original muscle cars and RAD-era or youngtimer cars proves that where you buy and what you pay depends entirely on which era you're chasing. In this video, we're going to break down the original muscle car explosion, and then we're going to solve the mystery of all the missing RADwood-era cars at Mecum Kissimmee this year. First, let's look at the original and highly original muscle car market. Any muscle car discussion usually starts with Chevrolet. Chevelle SS sales tell a strong story. First-gen models, with 64 through 1967, increased from 42.9% sell-through to 87.5% at Mecum Kissimmee year over year. That's nearly double. Buyers are finally recognizing these earlier Chevelle models. Second-gen Chevelles, the 68 to 72 models that most enthusiasts drool over, maintained an 80% sell-through with an average of 165,000. And get this, the second gen commands a 72% premium over the first generation. The top sale this year? A 1970 Chevelle SS 454 LS6 M22 convertible at $770,000. That's not a typo. That's nearly $750,000 for a Chevelle. But here's the thing. It's an LS6. It's a convertible. It's original. And there aren't many left. Scarcity wins every time. But now let's talk about what's really driving the Chevrolet numbers. And I call it the Yenko effect. You need to understand something. Yenko just isn't a special edition. These were dealer-modified cars from a legendary performance shop. And these cars were meant for racing. So finding them in original or highly original condition, they're basically unicorns. The data for these cars is wild. Only 2 Yenko Camaros were offered at Mecum Kissimmee in 2025. And this year, 9. That's a 350% inventory increase. And guess what? 8 of those 9 sold. That's an 88.9% sell-through rate. Here's the kicker. The average Yenko sold for $582,312. That's up 285% year over year. And check this out. Those 8 Yenko sales were only 10% of the total Chevrolet sales offered at Mecum, but they represented over 1/3 of the dollar volume in just those 8 cars. Now, not everything is rainbow and unicorns in the muscle car world. Let's talk about the first and second generation Pontiac GTO. GTO inventory actually declined at Mecum year over year, from 56 cars to 39. First gen sell-through this year actually improved to 87%, but the second gen That dropped from nearly 71% to 50% year over year. That means that only 8 of the 16 second-gen GTOs in original or highly original condition sold. That's not good. And prices, first-gen examples are down nearly 8%, and second-gen are down nearly 11%. The GTO market seems to be cooling while Chevelles and Mopars are heating up. The GTO Judge models averaged $133,000, led by a 71 Judge that hammered for $214,500. But compare that to the overall trend, and you see a brand in transition. If you're looking for value, like actual undervalued assets, a GTO might be your play. But if you're looking for appreciation momentum, the data says look elsewhere right now. All right, before I move on to Mopar, quick detour to Oldsmobile 442 and Buick Grand Sports. Those models had a combined sales of only 21 units, averaging $73,510. Those are the cars that are an affordable way into GM muscle. Significantly cheaper than Chevelles and GTOs, or Mopars for that matter. If you're trying to get into the GM muscle car game without spending 6 figures, then an Oldsmobile 442 or a Buick Grand Sport may be for you. Now let's talk about the real story of Mecum Kissimmee this year. Mopar. Dodge and Plymouth combined had 64 sales, averaging just over $178,000. That's nearly a 40% year-over-year increase. That's the highest of any brand I analyzed. Sell-through rate, 81%. Buyers were basically fighting over these cars. Interestingly enough, Plymouth commands a 17.7 average premium over a similar Dodge offering. That's the power of the Roadrunner and Cuda nameplates. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. The Hemi effect. Only 11 Hemi cars sold. That's only 17.2% of all the Mopar muscle cars offered. But those 11 cars generated $6 million in sales revenue, or over half of the total Mopar dollar volume. Again, more than half the money came from just 17% of the Mopars offered. The average Hemi-powered sales price, $545,000. The average non-Hemi-powered car, just over $102,000. That's a 5.3x multiplier. The Hemi premium continues to be real. And of course, the $3.3 million Plymouth Hemi Cuda. That single car was 29% of all Mopar volume at Mecum Kissimmee this year. One car, nearly 30% of the money. The top 5 Mopar sales, all Hemi powered. Every single one. The lesson, if you've got a Hemi car sitting in original condition, you're sitting on a gold mine. And if you're looking to buy, bring a very big checkbook. All right, let's shift to Ford. Ford had the best sell-through rate of any muscle car brand at 85.5%. With 65 cars sold this year, they also had the highest sales volume. But here's the interesting part. Ford's average sales price was just over $81,000. That's below GTOs, that's below Chevelles, and that's really below Mopars. One could say Ford is positioned now as the value brand of the original muscle car era. On average, you're paying 54% less for a Ford than a Mopar and 40% less than the typical Chevelle. And nearly 90% of those Ford muscle cars, Mustangs. Ford muscle is Mustang muscle. But don't sleep on the Boss premium. Boss and Shelby Mustangs average just over $220,000, while regular Ford Mustangs average just over $64,000. That's over a 3x multiplier. The Boss 429, a very rare car when new, actually was 3 were offered this year, and those 3 averaged just over $350,000, with the top sale being $374,000. Those numbers are approaching Hemi and Yenko territory. Here's the Mustang value spectrum. Regular Mustangs, $49,000 average, accessible, 38 cars sold. Mach 1, $118,000 average. I would call this a high-end sweet spot with 13 sold. Boss 302, nearly $123,000 average. 4 of these track-focused legends sold this year at Mecum. And the NASCAR homologation unicorn, the Boss 429, 350,000 average, 3 sold this year. The spread from bottom to top of the Mustang spectrum is 7.1x. That's your investment ladder right there. And here's something crucial. Shelby isn't tracked as Ford at Mecum. It's its own make. That tells you everything you need to know about brand positioning. 20 Shelby sales averaged 269,000. That's a 3x multiplier over more common Ford Mustangs. Sell-through was 74.1%, and total volume grew just over 47% to 5.4 million. GT350 variants averaged 295,000, while GT500 examples averaged 253,000. The top sale was a 65 GT350 at $660,000. The takeaway? Shelby is a premium performance brand with its own market dynamics separate from Ford. Data. The top 25% of original and highly original muscle cars appreciated between 29 and 41% in 1 year. But, and this is crucial, you just can't buy any old muscle car. The data screams that documentation, originality, and rare options are what matter. A Boss 429, a Yenko, a Hemi car, these aren't just cool, they're scarce. And scarcity in a passionate collector car market is money. Here's the thing, the window for original examples is closing. Every year, more cars get restored. Every year, more barn finds get discovered and lose their originality. Every year, this pool shrinks. If you want an original car, buy now. The data shows that demand is outpacing supply at the premium level. That Hemi Cuda for $3.3 million seemed crazy. But 5 years ago, $1 million Hemi car seemed crazy. Scarcity doesn't get better with time. The universal truth, this market rewards 3 things. Scarcity, production numbers matter. Provenance, documentation is worth real money. And originality. Unrestored is the new restored. Remember, cars are only original once. As original cars get more valuable, restored examples are getting relatively cheaper. Look, here's the bottom line. The original and highly original muscle car market isn't just healthy, it's thriving. But it's not a uniform market anymore. We're seeing the classic wealth gap playing out in collector cars. The ultra-premium stuff with rare options and documentation, going vertical. The mid-market solid examples, steady depreciation. The entry-level originals, still accessible and holding value. Whether you're 30 or 70, whether you're buying your first muscle car or selling your last, the data tells you what to do. Focus on scarcity, prioritize documentation, and respect originality. The restored car market is huge, but this market, the original and highly original segment, is where serious collectors and serious money are heading. In my hand is $500 that most classic car auction sites wouldn't even think about spending on your collector car. Bring a trailer and all the rest, charge you a Benjamin just to list your car. We flip that. This goes into professional photography, video, and a pre-purchase inspection first. All you pay up front is this. No dealers, only vetted private sellers and buyers. We reject over half the submissions we receive. Think your ride makes the cut? Guyswithrides.com, where we invest first. All right, let's pivot to the RADwood era. Those are vehicles manufactured between 1980 and 1999. Others call it the Young Timers era. I'm going to show you something that looks contradictory until you understand what's happening. First, the good news. For the RADwood era cars that did show up at Mecum Kissimmee 2026, the market was strong. Sell-through rate jumped to 80.7%. That's up 3.5 percentage points year over year. The average sales price climbed 9.4% to just over $42,000. Even high bids on unsold RADwood era cars jumped 24%. Buyers were getting more aggressive at this year's event. And here's the big one. The premium segment, rides selling between 80 and 100,000 doubled year over year. But here's where it gets interesting. The median price only went up 3.3%. So a few big sales are skewing that average way up. And most importantly, look at this number. Nearly 23% fewer RADwood-era vehicles crossed the block year over year. Mecum Kissimmee went from 242 RADwood-era vehicles offered in 2025 to just 187 in 2026. So the cars that showed up sold better and for more money, but there were way fewer of them. Where did they go? Well, before we dig into that mystery, let's address the elephant in the room, or dare I say the prancing horse. Overall, Mecum Kissimmee this year had an insane collection of Ferraris, known as the Bachmann Collection. While the focus of the Bachmann Collection to many was the atrocious yellow collection of more modern Ferraris, what stood out to me was the absolutely insane RAD-era part of the Bachmann Collection. An F50 from that collection hammered for $12.2 million. A 288 GTO hammered for a combined $12.4 million. These 6 Ferraris alone accounted for over $35 million in sales. And look, that's incredible. But unless you're shopping for Ferraris with the GDP of a small nation supporting you, these numbers are completely irrelevant to your investment strategy. So let's talk about the cars normal human beings can actually afford. Let's start with Japanese performance cars from the RAD era, because this is where the migration story is most dramatic. At Mecum Kissimmee in 2025, they offered 123 Japanese cars. This year, only 57. That's a 54% collapse. Toyota went from 49 cars to just 19. Honda dropped from 35 to 12. The JDM presence at Mecum essentially evaporated. But look at what happened when quality Japanese cars did show up at Mecum this year. A 1998 Super Turbo hammered at $242,000. An Acura NSX-T hit $154,000. Another first-gen NSX brought $137,500, and a JDM or Japanese domestic market Skyline GTR sold for $74,000. Even an FD generation Mazda RX-7 cleared $55,000. So the money is clearly there, but the inventory, it's not at Mecum anymore. And here's the key insight. Mecum is simply not on the radar for most Japanese car enthusiasts. The Japanese enthusiast community is probably the most dramatic to shift to online platforms where Supras, NSXs, and Skylines actively trade. They're on Bring a Trailer. They're on Cars and Bids, but they're not flying to Kissimmee in January. If you want a perfect example of this, look no further than third generation, better known as Fox Body Ford Mustangs. In 2025, Mecum Kissimmee offered 31 Fox Body Mustangs. This year, only 13. That's a 58% collapse. However, the overall U.S. market, according to Classic.com, those 303 sales totaled $9.2 million, or roughly $30,386 average selling price. Let me say that again. Year over year, Mecum saw Fox Body offerings cut in half, but the actual market is currently worth about $9.2 million across 300 vehicles annually. That's roughly 25 Fox Body Mustangs selling elsewhere every month. The market didn't collapse. Average selling prices are remaining steady. The cars just aren't at traditional auctions anymore. In 2025, Mecum offered no fewer than 57 C4 Corvettes. In 2026, just 13, down 77%. But the actual market in the U.S., 347 sales in the last 12 months, worth about $4.6 million, or an average of just over $13,000. Personally, if I were going to buy a C4 Corvette, I would focus my attention on the 92 to 96 models, because those models feature the redesigned dash, better quality control, better sound insulation, and they offered the 6-speed ZF transmission. Those are the ones that are appreciated, but it seems like you're not going to find them at Mecum anymore. They're trading online where C4 enthusiasts actually congregate. Now, within this trend at Mecum, E30 BMWs, that's the iconic 3 Series BMW imported into the U.S. among a variety of body styles between 1984 and 1991. In 2025, Mecum offered 2 E30 BMWs, neither of which sold. This year, in 2026, they offered 4 of which 3 sold, a 75% sell-through rate. 6 cars over 2 years. That's not a market, that's a rounding error. But the real market in the U.S. alone, 310 sold in the past year, generating $10.2 million in sales volume, or an average of just under $33,000 per car. $10 million market for E30s in just the U.S. The cars exist, the transactions are happening, but if you're waiting for them to show up at a Mecum event, you're going to be disappointed. Finally, the iconic R107 Mercedes SL. If you look at cars for sale day in and day out like I do, the Mercedes SL from the 70s and 80s are very common. I really don't mess with the earlier versions, known as the 380. The one you want to pay attention to is the 560 SL. That was the final iteration and arguably the most desirable, albeit with the big US bumpers. Last year, Mecum offered 5 560 SLs. Only one sold at $24,000. However, this year, they only offered 2 560 SLs. Both of them sold for an average of $60,000. Quite a jump. Okay, so when they do show up, prices are climbing. But again, tiny volumes. The actual U.S. market saw 240 sales annually, worth about $7 million, or an average selling price of about $29,000. Do you see the pattern? Of all the R107 Mercedes SLs, the 560 is the one to watch, but you're likely not going to find inventory at live auctions. So let me connect the dots, because this fundamentally changes your buying strategy. Look at these numbers. Fox bodies, 303 sales annually versus 13 at Mecum Kissimmee. C4 Corvettes, 347 sold nationally versus only 4 at Mecum. E30 BMWs, 310 sales in the past year versus only 4 at Mecum. Finally, 560 SLs, 240 sales nationwide versus only 2 at Mecum. The pattern can go on for other iconic RAD-era cars like NA Miatas and 944 Porsches, but just on my examples here, you get the gist. Traditional live auctions like Mecum now represent less than 5% of the RADwood-era market. And here's why. The 35 to 44-year-old who wants a Fox body or a Supra doesn't want to fly to Florida and compete for a panel number. They want to scroll an online site at 11 p.m. They want to read 200 comments arguing about panel gaps. They want a place to bid from their couch. The Fox body community lives in forums. The Japanese or JDM crowd is on Reddit. The C4 Corvette guys can be found in Facebook groups. They're not at live auctions, and neither are their cars. So here's what this means practically. If you're a buyer, stop expecting traditional auction houses to have inventory in the $20,000 to $100,000 RADwood segment. Go where the cars actually are and use search engines to find them in the latest online auctions. If you're a seller, your clean Fox body or documented C4 Corvette has an audience. It's just not sitting in a Mecum or Barrett-Jackson tent. It's online. But whether you decide to use my platform or someone else's, the key point is this. The RADwood market is healthy. It's just not where it used to be. The smart money followed the inventory. The inventory followed the enthusiasts, and the enthusiasts went online. So here's my shameless plug. I built Guys with Rides specifically for this shift. We saw the RADwood migration happening. We know that you want the trust of a live inspection with the convenience of an online bid. So whether you're buying a Fox body Mustang or an LS6 Chevelle, check us out. The numbers don't lie. The hobby is healthy, but the rules have changed. Don't get caught playing an old game in a new market. Thanks for watching more Auction Secrets Revealed. I'm Rudy from Guys with Rides, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching this video. Please press the like and subscribe button, comment below, and be sure to check out our other videos on this subject, as well as all of the great content on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, you can call me at the number listed below, or be sure to check out our main website, guyswithrides.com.